folks. Welcome to Plan to Protect with Melodie Bissell, the safest podcast on the internet. My name is Joshua Bissell, the producer of this weekly podcast, where we tackle topics of abuse prevention and vulnerable sector protection. We're so thankful that you've chosen to spend your time working towards the protection of the vulnerable and safeguarding those who are in our care. We trust that this time will be beneficial to you. Thank you again for joining us for Plan to Protect with Melodie Bissell, the safest podcast on the internet. Here's Melodie.
Last week we unpacked the topic of abuse and what is abuse and the prevalence of abuse. And we told some stories about some of the residential schools. Today I want to continue to build on that topic and provide a definition of what we mean at Plan to Protect as a person in a position of trust. Last week we learned about the definition of abuse, and it talked about parents and caregivers and people in a position of trust. As consultants, we often find that our clients don't quite understand what this definition really is about. One of my earliest memories was getting lost as a 6-year-old at the Canadian exhibition. I had candy floss in my hand, and I looked around and I could not find my parents anywhere. I tell you, that was a scary time, and it was one of my first and earliest memories. For that really was a traumatic event in my life. I can remember someone asking me if I was lost, and they ended up taking me to the Lost and Found, which was a building. And there was a sign on the door, and I remember seeing that sign, Lost and Found. It was there that they took away my candy floss, and I can remember looking, and it's still an image I can see to this day, looking in the garbage can at my candy floss that they had thrown away. I can still remember the relief on my father and mother's face of the door of the Lost and Found. They were so pleased to find me. I'm sure that was a traumatic event for them too. As I said, this was one of the scariest moments of my life. Another early memory is overhearing my parents talk about someone who that they had trusted who attempted inappropriate behavior against a young boy. Why do these memories stand out in my mind? I can remember coaching my own children that if they were ever lost or someone tried to hurt them, to find another mother with children or someone in a uniform and ask for help. Who are the trusted adults in a child's life? But do we trust those individuals blindly? These are individuals that should be screened and trained. Put yourself in the place of that child. If they needed someone to go to for help, who would they go to? Well, they would go to an adult that was in the classroom. They would go to someone who is in a uniform, someone who had a name tag. They would reach out for help to the adults and the older people in their life. At Plan to Protect, our recommendation is that the organization adopt a broad and inclusive definition of a person in a position of trust. We like to think of a lost child who in your services, in your activities, on your teams, would that child see as an individual whom they should or could trust? Are the folks handing out coffee and tea someone that a child would view as someone they could trust? Yes, they are. Is it someone who is an usher, a greeter, a security person, someone sitting behind the desk doing registration? Yes, a child would view this person as someone that they can trust. Is it your clergy, your administrative staff? Is it the teacher, the assistant who's helping with snacks and crafts? Yes. Is it the driver of the vehicle that's transporting them to and from program. Yes, the child, the young person, would view this individual as a person in a position of trust. Violation of a position of trust, in legal terms, refers to a situation where one person holds a position of authority over another person. Those individuals that you have introduced to the youth in your programs are individuals in a position of trust. Too often we find organizations wanting to make allowances for the one-time volunteer or the parents that are on a rotation basis to come and help in the program, saying, well, they're not really in a position of trust. I see organizations trying to define position of a trust as only the teacher in the classroom, not the assistants, not the snack lady, not the craft person, not the administrative staff. However, you have introduced the children to this individual in your program, the courts would see that this person is in a position of trust. You recruited them, you appointed them to the position that they are serving in. The relationship was forged as being part of your organization. If you are that person that's placing individuals in a position of trust, they're on the schedule, they're on the roster to be on duty that day, that means your organization and potentially you could be held vicariously liable for the actions of the person that abused that child or young person. This could involve criminal prosecution and in some cases, a civil lawsuit. Please don't take shortcuts. Please have a broad and inclusive definition of a person in a position of trust. This week, I want to challenge you to go look at your duty roster, to go look at your schedule. Are all those individuals screened and trained? Have you incorporated those roles in your broad and inclusive definition of a person in a position of trust? If not, you've got some homework to do. Screening and training them, ensuring that there's never isolation, that they are always being supervised and monitored. And honestly, if I was a teacher in a classroom and I had many children in that classroom, I would not wish to have to also monitor and supervise those that had not been screened and trained. Broad and inclusive definition of a person in a position of trust. Thanks for joining us this week. Take care. Bye.